Well, for all of you who will be joining us later online or, I don't know, just for fun, like to listen to me talk. And here we are, we're gonna start. We're on week 4 of talking about what it means to be an Episcopalian, the beliefs and practices. We started with baptism and the questions and so forth, and we sort of been tying this whole thing into the questions that the promises that we make at our baptism or that someone makes for us. And we get to the part today, do you continue in the apostles' teaching and fellowship, in the breaking of bread and in the prayers? That is one of the, that is the covenant that we say together. And so this is the breaking of bread, right? Mm-hmm. Now, it also means in fellowship, yes, but obviously that symbolism of the breaking of bread is evident in the Eucharist. It is always a major symbol and sign in the Eucharist. What is your experience of the Eucharist? You guys have to be, since you're the only ones here, you have to respond. What is your experience of the Eucharist?
It varies from somebody.
Yeah, isn't that lovely?
It's more profound to me when the bread is actually broken than when it's doled out and wafer-like and pre-cut and all that.
Unfortunately, a practice of the Middle Ages when clerics were worried about the health of people, not really, and then they wanted to control who got communion and how they got it, and so the use of the wafer came into
for sanitary reasons. It was like the common cup during COVID.
Yeah. So yes, and it started as bread obviously because it came from. It's a Jewish practiche. The challah bread every Sabbath meal on the Friday night beginning of Sabbath, right, is challah that's broken with prayers. Yeah.
But the mere fact of breaking to me is poetic.
Yeah.
Well, it's well, I think it's the parallel that we're broken and Jesus was broken, and to me it's got a lot of meaning there.
Our lives
The wafer just that's right. The wafer just doesn't do it for me. But that
breaking is the way out.
Yeah, we can only go if we get broke.
Can't we think of another way? I find that
I suppose you can. You don't have to participate. That's it's not a have to.
why do Catholics? Why are they so exclusive or exclusionary?
Because they feel like the preparation is in this particularly confession and understanding what you're doing is important in the Catholic sense. And that's how they can decide to, and not every Catholic is, right? It is the rule, I get you. Some churches are more or less strict.
Our son was in the choir church in Nashville and went to Atlanta to sing, which is the big one in Buckhead, or Fort Buckhead, a huge.
Catholic church?
No.
Episcopal church. St. Philip's.
St. Philip's.
Or it could be St. Louis or also.
No, I think it's St. Philip's.
Yeah.
Huge, beautiful church. And the priest passed him by. And he's 5 or 6. He passed him by one time and he stayed. And everybody went on and passed him the next time. He grabbed his robe and he said, "Don't forget me." I mean, he really just, yeah. And they weren't used to there at St. Philip's.
Children receiving.
because we didn't do it till 6th grade.
No,
At
I
our
didn't
church
either.
at home,
Right.
Right out of the crib. I find it's as far as like life, looking at it from a lifespan, in my wandering faith through all the years of coming and going and getting close and getting far away, if I were in a position to take the Eucharist, it always meant something to me mysteriously. It was a little treehouse.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't understand it, and it didn't mean I could totally throw myself into Christianity, but it was there. It meant something to me. Of all the things that you do in church or don't do in church, that was the one.
Mm-hmm. There's enough, the ritual has enough mystery in it, right? And I think it's intended to be that way. I think it has been intended to be that way since its inception. When you think of the Eucharist, what are the scriptures that come to mind that sort of give it authority?
Mhm.
You know, can you think of any?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
The scriptures that come to mind that give Eucharist authority. Maybe there aren't any. Maybe it's just a practice for you.
Well, for me, it's an attempt to recover from the it's
Reset.
trying to mend.
When having an earth or joint or one of those things, yeah.
And I'm always somehow put off, though, I have to admit, when we talk, well, when we say, descended and up in heaven, located, none of that means anything. That's to me magic stuff, and that, I wish we kind of grew out of that. It's the shades of Santa Claus and the chimney and all that kind of stuff. I wish we would, and maybe, I don't know, maybe that's right 5 or whatever that I'm looking for, or like 10.
You would have liked the class that was taught, the stages of faith.
It came some.
And it was pretty complicated, but also it really spelled out how, maybe this thing that puts you off at this age as odd is the only way that somebody at level 2 can get it.
That connects to it.
Okay, and then what you hopefully develop, but that as you come into, as your mind is formed, it can only accept certain things.
It was a really interesting program on the radio yesterday when I was driving up, talking about how do cultures transfer their culture to children. And apparently, 98% of our lives has been spent in a non-technological universe. And what they really allow for, and they've been able to sort of rediscover, is that letting children play is probably by far and away the most important thing that can happen. And invariably, the children play, if they're from a fishing town, they play fishermen. And if they're from a hunting place, they play hunting. And if they're an Eskimo place, they're out there on the ice doing stuff. So the children naturally are inclined to want to emulate what their parents are doing without the parents forcing any issues. And if the parents really try to keep them safe. So in a way, maybe the Eucharist is calling us to be safe, to do it every week, to be reminded that it's almost a cultural as well as a spiritual.
I think you're right, and that was our argument for years about having children in church. Like, how do we transmit faith? John Westerhoff, that was his big, he wrote his book about it. Our children are gonna have faith because their parents have faith.
Or they're not gonna have faith because their parents don't have it.
They'll react to it.
And the studies they've done about, what are the cults, is the parents that invariably did go to church, they didn't believe the darn thing, and it was all for social or hierarchical or money or whatever, and the kids pick up that it's just vacuous, and they decide they're really, really hungry for something their parents didn't give them, and so they go overboard, which is...
Yeah, I guess there's, and then, we developed a whole Christian formation program called Godly Play.
Yeah.
Right? Or Catechism of the Bishop, which Godly Play was sprung from that. But, in that, by doing those things, that's how we learn those things. And we
the pattern and all that.
Yeah.
Clean the play.
Yes. And it's not, some people would say, well, that takes away the mystery of it. But I think it creates the mystery of it. Just like playing house creates the mystery of what it is to be a grown-up. Or I don't care what you call it. My kids used to play diner, and that's when Thelma realized we ate out way too much.
we have a dear friend who's a psychologist who Christmas time, just years ago, got in an argument with a woman that was really into gun control, complete gun control, no plastic guns at Christmas and all these things. And he said, they're gonna play with guns, they're gonna find sticks, they're in fact denying the reality of certain things only makes it that much more appealing to children.
Absolutely.
And then she started getting violent when he was saying this. It was the strangest thing to watch this happen. So
Isn't that scary?
Yeah.
Because now yes.
You know, this came up with Ruby Clyde because there's a gun that killed her father.
Right.
Beforehand.
Right.
There's a gun in the robbery. She's got play pistols.
Right, she's.
And people, some people have objected to the idea of even having guns in a story. And I was like, I usually tell people when it comes up at a school or something, I said, guns are everywhere. And they need to know. I mean, these pieces of information are important for them to process. A gun killed her father, a gun commits a crime, a gun is a tool. You know, it's just information. I'm not pro or against any of this.
Yeah.
But what, you're gonna sanitize it?
I'm changing the subject slightly. The cross is obviously a major part of the service, and the Eucharistic will then while and sing. And to me, it's a little bit. I prefer to see the fish, or
Another symbol.
It's almost like saying, let's put the limousine up there for Kennedy. This our.
You're a Jehovah's Witness at heart.
The pink hat, or her pink Christian hat, or whatever. The instrument of the death to me is not what it's about. That's disturbing.
Well, it is, but it's the redemption.
I know.
It's the redemption.
It's what it becomes.
I understand, but it's still.
It's the same thing that, I guess when Moses held up the snake on the bronze pole, right? Because what is the thing that can terrify us that also then can bring us life?
Yeah, it's both things.
Yeah.
And maybe Christians have it where Christians, Protestants displayed the cross without the body, where the Catholics have the body.
Did we talk about crosses recently? And the ones with the bodies on it, and then the ones with the bloody bodies on it. There was a session in here where people were relating crosses they'd seen and what it meant to them, simple cross or.
Yeah, I remember seeing a short-lived sitcom.
It was promising.
I know, a gay couple with a kid, and they're gonna baptize this baby. It's my favorite episode. I think it's called Parenthood, but I can't remember. And one of the men just has this fixation on Jesus, his abs. And he's like, I don't know that that's right. There's a whole conversation about the sexuality of Jesus, and if they wouldn't have made him.
Are they his abs, and should you respond that way? I remember that title, but I never watched it.
Would you mind pulling away and telling me you've got 1, 2, 3, 8 weeks? Is it?
Mhm.
Why 8, not 12?
Because this is, the reality is, how much time do we have before 3 services start?
No, okay.
It was totally moved by the calendar.
Did you create the 8? I mean, in the subjects for each of the 8?
No, I would not.
Episcopalian 101, is that sort of a thing in the Episcopal Church? Is the bishop, the
No,
presiding
I mean, you
bishop?
can do it any way you want. This is the way Rob wanted to do it.
Okay. So,
I came up with this idea that we should run it like through the baptismal covenant. And then he, added stuff.
okay, so would you give me the heading for each of the 8? The Eucharist is today.
And that's the 28th, and it says it on there.
Yeah.
Last week we did the Bible.
Whoa, in 1 week, okay.
1 week. I mean, we're grown up, so you're gonna have to do your own work.
Right.
Yeah.
okay.
And tomorrow next week we're gonna do, whatever, time, seasons, colors, all that.
But the seasons of the liturgical year,
The calendar.
is that universal? Is that basically accepted in all?
Among
Maybe one.
among liturgical churches, yeah. Greek Orthodox churches do a little bit differently, of course. Their calendar's a little bit different because it's on the old
But
calendar.
it's the same.
Like they're having Easter this week, right?
Yeah.
Because Passover is this week. So it coincides with that.
So if we're doing set theory, what did we leave out? Or what was not covered in this big?
Other sacramental rites, we're only covering baptism and
Okay.
communion. We're not talking about wedding, unction or marriage or
Okay.
death or reconciliation or ordination or stuff like that. So we're not talking about the creeds. We're not talking about basically the history of the church much. I mean, it's woven in there.
Mhm.
We're not talking about stewardship. We're not talking about, how do you know what your spiritual gifts are? Which I think is part of a good, it's like we say God has given us these things. How do we get connected to that? How do we figure it out? Or how do we decide we don't want to figure it out? Or how, yeah. And then, I love that.
I think recognizing that everybody's got a gift, that helps you be kind to everybody.
Well, it's what we've been doing together. Most of the classes that I've taught here have all been about that. I mean, it's all been about some self-examination and spend time doing that work together and then separately, I hope. The book we're doing right now on the Celtic practices is totally about how God is still working through us as our souls ripen, which is such a great phrase. Because it makes it seem like, as it's true, that we're not finished. We're not finished just because I can't run a 6-minute mile.
Yeah.
It's easy to get confused,
Yeah, I mean, physically.
especially when you're told you can do anything you want in this world, but should you? If you can't do it.
That's a conversation for a whole different day.
Yeah,
Should you?
Should you?
And we know that not everybody gets that same message.
Some folks do the Eucharist once a year, twice a year. Was there consternation in the Episcopal Church deciding to celebrate every week or all?
On the Eucharist?
Mhm.
So back in the day, it was every week, right? It was this annual the weekly celebration of Sabbath. And we incorporated into it both the practices at home and the practices in temple when we had house churches.
Mhm.
And it was followed by a meal. I think you guys probably know that story. So, and then when it became a national religion, and it maintained that pattern, but always in a church. And then, when clericalism was at its height, it became, and then language became an issue, and having, knowing what you're doing, how you're doing it, when, say the Mass is spoken in Latin,
Mhm.
and no one's really speaking Latin, except anybody who's been to college. And all college was for was to train up priests. So that whole cycle just, it just increased that. Then they had to legislate for a time. There wasn't a lot of church going. There just wasn't time for people to go to church. Their lives were so consumed with living, like surviving. And so they legislated that one had to go to church twice a year and receive the sacrament. And then,
So this was in English.
no, this was cross Europe.
Yeah, okay.
And
Christendom.
yeah,
When it was still Christendom.
so I know when we think, because as Americans, people have always gone to church and there's a decline in church membership and participation in the sacraments. That's not true. People did not go to church. They didn't understand what was happening. They had to take care of their families and their animals.
They went to church in the 50s.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
That was really it. And they went to church when they lived out in the middle of nowhere once a month because they got to see people and there was usually food.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That way
It wasn't-
it's revival.
There wasn't child there, there was just one room,
It was just where you were.
and there were two doors
Yeah,
from men and.
something like that, right? I mean, so the practice then,
Well, the priests had full-time jobs.
sometimes that might have been the case too.
They were Protestant out in the country.
Yeah, they had their own places of work, yeah. So, it was different things to different people. To people who were priests or who had a job inside of church, it would be very different, right? There was a daily mass, there was daily worship, there was monasteries, daily 17 times a day worship, there was all that. But in the world, I mean, there were cathedral churches where people could come, much like we go now, and say, this is the cathedral church, and it's a pilgrimage. We're not there every week, but we know that's the seat of our thing, and maybe that's where stuff happens, like all the babies come or whatever. And, because there was no record keeping, I mean, the state used the church to keep their records.
Birth and death and all that.
Right. So they would use the church in that capacity, like to record a birth or a baptism or a death.
So the prayer book, the 74, the 78 prayer book, and the 28 or whatever, the prayer book, was the Eucharist every week in the older?
No, in the 29 prayer book, which was the prayer book from 1929 until 1979, most places still had morning prayer 3 Sundays a month. I grew up like that. Morning prayer 3 Sundays a month. And Eucharist on 1 Sunday.
Oh.
Yeah, that's what
I had
That's
growing
what
up.
I'm
But the new prayer book moved the centrality
right.
of baptism and the Eucharist back to its, what they could say through the patristic fathers and mothers existed in that early church.
Is there a move afoot to revise the 79 prayer book?
Oh, yeah.
Is that gonna happen?
No, I mean, it has been. There are, what we call, you've seen this, enriching our worship. You've seen those letters, EOW, maybe some places you worship. There are 6, 10, I don't know how many now, authorized Eucharistic prayers, not the 4, and then or the 6 that are in the prayer book currently. So the prayer book is probably never going to change. I think they've decided that, and then they will just publish these addendums.
And where are the addendums?
I can get online. I have paper copies in my office. They publish them. But right now there's like 6 supplemental little prayer books.
That's how they do legal cases. There's the book and then they keep adding little things.
And is that where, like, dissolution of marriage or of same gender?
Yeah, there's some reassignment of name or whatever. Sometimes those are in some of those additional materials, right? Those I think are called the Book of Occasional Services.
It's not tearing the church apart at this point. We're done being torn apart.
I think there are probably always people who will find some thing that they're upset about.
I see.
Something that they think really violates the very core of who they are. Christians or Episcopalians or both. But most people, I think, believe that those issues are settled.
Okay. The Methodists, within the Episcopal Church.
Within the Episcopal Church. I mean, the Methodists, they're gonna, it'll be what it is for them. But it'll be the 2 branches of that, and I guess people will wonder where.
I have a little cousin who's on the hot seat for doing a gay marriage outside of the church in another part of the state. But that black woman who's come from Virginia, Methodist, is very conservative, and she was making a point about this. So they're in turmoil. Everybody's in turmoil.
It's been a lot in the paper because they're having their first conference in several years.
Exactly, and poor Elizabeth just got on the hot seat, but she believes in what she did, and Stands by it.
How is the Anglican Church here in Cashers? You heard
Like,
of
I'm
them?
thinking, how are they? What do you mean? I
Do you
don't.
see them? Do you see them?
We're in communion with
You
them.
are? Okay.
We participate in.
Didn't y'all go around in Easter,
Yeah.
all the different,
All the Holy Week things, we switched whose church we were worshiping in. I mean, I like the guy. He's nice enough. He seems,
Is their membership strong, small? We have any idea? Does it matter?
is that community?
I'm busy on Sunday, so I don't know what their
You're not
looks like.
counting their parking lot?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's community Bible towards Harlan that is so popular.
With some people, yeah,
I mean, big, just.
it's a lot. Well, they have a lot of staff. So they have a very intensive children and youth program, but they're struggling. It doesn't, everybody has the formula for today. What
So
will
wanna
feed
get it
people
right.
today, and then it doesn't work because it isn't, just because community is in your name, doesn't mean it's in your DNA.
It's in your blood.
It's not, so they struggle because, like most of the ones do, with they get a lot of people in, and they also get a lot of people out.
Interesting.
And that
They're shiny object.
goes back to the culty thing.
Mhm.
They get disappointed, then they may give up.
That's right.
And
It's
that
a
to me
very
is
Eleanor
sad.
and Judy
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
group.
no, I get that.
I did community Bible study because they recommended it.
Mm-hmm.
I opened myself to it, but it didn't take it.
No, I think they're looking for, I think the first part of my sermon, or one of my points of my sermon, was that we should avoid the desire to know. We should avoid the desire to have all the right answers. We should, knowing how to interpret scriptures, we know the way. And there is that sense of that in many of those places that most of us find disagreeable. I find it very disagreeable.
Hard-edged.
Well.
I
as soon as-
disagree with it.
Yeah, as soon as you define that this is the way, it's telling everybody else that this is not the way.
And then I think that's the part you can sense, right? Like, maybe it's not spoken, but maybe it is. Not everybody is as nuanced as you to kind of hear then what the flip side, the side B of that, because there is a side B, absolutely.
And the side B, I mean, this is what's our country really, and colleges, universities are incredibly.
Yeah.
And there's just this week.
It's just a lot, and that's what it's a throwaway line in my sermon. If we don't do this now, when will we do it? Because, my son and I are talking a lot about, don't you think they have the right to protest? And I said, I absolutely believe that they have the right to protest, and I think the problem is the misinterpretation or the deliberate.
Communicate about it.
Yes,
Presumption.
the presumption that it's something else, and I said, what they're asking for, at Columbia, for example, is the divestiture from investments that propagate a war machine. That's what that's not, there may be other
They did that in
issues.
South Africa, remember all those protests
Remember?
about South Africa?
Yes, we did it in the church because the church pension fund was heavily invested both in South Africa and later in Israel. And we just asked to not have our pensions invested in that way. I think that's, in many dioceses, so my last diocese spent an inordinate amount of time, probably to their detriment, but in any case, divesting from that and fighting and talking and doing the work of communicating about what you want to do.
Well, these kids, they feel guilty, benefiting from war.
They feel clearly.
Well,
They're young enough to feel.
there's right and wrong, black and white.
But it's also muddy because they use terms like genocide and Jews instead of Israel and Jews instead of Netanyahu.
Or Arabs and so.
Or Arabs instead of, and Hamas. They're not being careful with the language of what they're protesting.
Or they aren't, I don't know, because the interpretation of news.
Even smart people in the news get those of that language.
Right. And so when I don't know when I'm reading something or listening to something, Did the students say this, or is this what?
And the students don't speak with one voice either.
No,
I mean, how?
I think they've been really clear about that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly Congress doesn't speak with one voice. It's wild to me.
But being more careful would help.
Well, they're
To define the term.
quite.
I mean, I think we can safely say we're against Hamas and we're against Netanyahu, and we're for Palestinians and for the Jews.
Tell me about this walking one.
The book?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Scott Gunn is one of the authors. He's the, I don't know if it was his title, President, CEO of Forward Movement. He's not an old guy. He's like 45. Been an Episcopal priest for a long time. He's a really nice guy. He's pretty talented. And he's done a lot with Forward Movement in terms of making it not just your day.
8 weeks are paralleling this book.
Yeah, we chose the chapters.
Yeah, okay.
What else is he doing? What is Forward Movement?
Oh, it publishes the day by day.
Oh,
You know,
okay, Forward Movement, it publishes.
Yeah, it's a publishing.
Okay.
And he's just really taken it, it's not just, I mean, it's not just print anymore, right? It's a full media place, and he understands and tries to, how do I say this? Right, so the presiding bishop says things, the church says things, the prevailing theologies, do you know what I'm trying to?
It's
So he tries to take it, and make it somehow, he's
Almost one voice.
he makes it like say, what is our church saying about something? You know, so there's materials in the books he publishes and the kinds of things that he asks people to write on and so forth, try to articulate what the church is doing now. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Would you tell me about Union Theological Seminary?
Sure,
and
what would you like to
General
know?
Theological
Yeah.
Seminary.
Both in New York City.
And they're merging or something, is that right?
Which is the giant one. Union.
Virginia is the giant one in Alexandria.
Okay.
The one
The
in
seat of probably the strongest racist community in America at the start of the Civil War. Did you know that?
Alexandria?
But Alexandria, Virginia.
Yes.
It's seceded from DC. You know, it was part of DC. Did you know that?
No.
It was part. It was just life with animosity. But anyway,
Yes.
so that is that.
They felt strongly about that. I get that part. Maybe perhaps that's still part of it. I'm not sure. General just has never been able to manage their finances, ever. Not when I was there, not when Rob was there, never, and has struggled for
And
100
that's where
years.
Niebuhr, and that's where a lot of folks have been. It's the, no, it's the,
No, a Union, Niebuhr was at Union,
which is the most liberal one? Okay.
but it's not a denominational seminary, right?
Is
It's a-
general
General is
is
the
Episcopalian.
The Episcopal Seminary of the United States.
And what is Virginia?
That is an Episcopal seminary.
But
so-
it's not the,
No, but it's, there was only the general seminary. But Virginia has assumed, leadership in some ways of general. So, maintaining a block of presence in Chelsea with aging buildings and the cost of being in New York, it just is overwhelming.
so.
I mean, it still functions. I'm not, they're having a, graduation in a week, so,
Is Union, well, there's,
So Union is was, I'm gonna get this wrong, a Methodist, it was called the Protestant seminary. And that's a place where like James Cone would have taught, or, just think of who you're more progressive. I can't think of one process theologian right now.
with the name for Union, fall out from the Civil War at all, or was it always Union?
As far as I know, it's always Union Seminary. I don't even know when it began.
Okay. So
I only took
general-
some classes there. Greek, I took Greek there.
Well, so the general is the Episcopal, but is it struggling, you're saying financially?
Has for, it's many decades.
So the Episcopal Church does not directly fund it,
It does. There's some amount of money from the budget.
but that's not enough to keep it.
No, nor is tuition, nor is its endowments, which it spent down in the early.
And Wall Street won't have the Wall Street church that's so wealthy won't have.
Trinity probably gives them money. I mean, they get money from many places, but can you imagine what it would cost? There are 20 buildings on campus that are in Manhattan, 200 years old.
Yeah.
Well,
There's one important. But we had dinner with somebody who's former dean there.
Well, Kurt Dumble.
Yeah.
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 Kurt was 2 years ahead of me in seminary. So, yes.
But he got let go, sort of, or kind of, or something.
I think he just decided he would retire. I don't know what the pressure was. He's quite close-lipped about it, which is admirable.
But yeah, I looked it.
If you're that kind of person.
I looked it up on Wikipedia. There's.
Oh, there was when he assumed the head of the place, it had 8 professors that was called whatever, the general 8, who walked out or who got fired or who did something. And there was, we were all mad at her, like, as alumni. I just think I didn't like the way he was. It pales now. I don't think I was so upright about it. Mm-hmm. Kurt I didn't know him well, but I know him better now, and
You're into the table.
I have a different respect for him than I did then. Before I thought he was.
That's what it should be.
Where does he live? Do you see him?
He's here, he lives here, half-time, he lives in Jacksonville, the other half.
Oh, she did say that.
Yeah, he preaches here occasionally, and I think he's gonna be working very closely with Toby this summer at Summer Chapel.
That's what he said, he's gonna do Summer Chapel.
Mhm.
I don't know why he was socialized, I don't remember anything anybody says.
Well, maybe because you're just in the moment.
I just daydream.
Is that what it is?
In the moment, where the moment goes, it takes my
What's happening to
brain
me,
with
people
it.
said, do you remember what she said? I'm like, no, I don't, like, it's like pastoral visits, I don't have, like, precise, I don't remember precisely what someone
You're
tells me.
so deep in the moment.
I'm just in the moment and then I have to let it go, otherwise I'd be a crazy person.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I already am a crazy person, but I'd be
You're
more,
non-functioning.
I would talk.
He's
He's better, I mean, definitely every day now. Definitely every day better, but it's just a struggle, it's just, how do you know what he forgot? He's 6 months old. How do you know what he's not gonna have capacity for? He's 6 months old, so there's all the worry that goes with that.
Mhm.
And I think that's just what I told Rob, I've taken on the worrying for my whole family.
Yeah.
And so that no one else will have to, which is so stupid. I say it, but like, I actually have.
Yeah.
I actually have taken
You're
on
the
all of
pastoral
it,
lady.
apparently. And it's ridiculous, and they don't know I'm doing it, nor would they care, but how could they stop it? I don't want them to worry, it's just to wait, that's it.
No choice.
I mean, is he gonna be a kid who punches people in the face when he gets mad? I have no idea. I'm just terrified that some part of his brain part of his brain is completely, probably irreparably damaged. But what will that mean? Like won't ever be able to sit still or have a conversation.
So there is some
process. Yeah, but, everyone has good stories about, we don't need all of our brain and.
Well, everybody's damaged in some way, so.
Yeah.
Or what does it mean? What is it gonna be?
Right.
And we don't get to see that.
No, I mean, he's doing all the things one would want him to do.
You're wanting to know is a problem.
It could be eventually for my own.
So you're pretty young. You were saying earlier in this meeting that the wanting to know in certain churches gets them in terrible trouble.
It could be applied to this as well.
Yeah.
Mhm. Because I see children who were there who clearly are never going to be they're not coming back.
Where is it?
Scottish Rite in Atlanta.
Is it a hospital or a facility?
No, it's a hospital. Yeah, and they're very good and they're it's like, you couldn't get any luckier if you wouldn't go somewhere and live somewhere.
I mean, it's easy for me to observe that in you. I'm not trying to
Yeah.
be, it's just, gosh, what a time.
Well,
Sorry.
at a time, yeah, and I think, it probably is exacerbated by being there when you see all the children that are there and the extent of their injuries.
Seeing is hard.
And I'm like, I can't unsee that. I mean, it's okay when it's like a kid's lost a limb and you can speculate on why that might have happened. That's one thing, but when you see these kids and they're like, you know, they're clearly 8, 12, 17, and they're trying to use their limbs or talk or swallow or get rid of a feet, it's just like, is that him? I mean, my sister-in-law, no, she's my daughter-in-law. My daughter-in-law sent me a picture, and in the picture, she was just happy because he was in the stroller and, you know.
They're living in Big Hope.
Yeah, and so he's drooling, his one eye is closed because he's got this thing called third eye palsy, which is almost gone. Both of his eyes are open, it's beautiful. But his eye is closed, he's drooling, and he can't hold his neck up. And I was just like, why did you send me that?
Yeah.
Jesus, that's like everything oh my God, I forgot about it.
Worry about.
That's everything I'm worried about. Like, that is what I think he's gonna be when he's 24.
Right.
And we're gonna be all scrambling to help my children figure out how to raise him.
Yeah.
And I'm 2.5 hours away. I can't go, I mean, we go I want to be there. I do, but every weekend.
They're living in Atlanta.
Yeah, we've been there every weekend.
You go.
I go Thursday when I finish work and we come back some Saturday night.
I'm sure that helps. I
mean, I both want to come home and I both want to be there, so it's hard.
Our children, I wanted, when they were howling and doing, I wanted them to be asleep so I could just, as soon as they fell asleep, I wanted to wake them up. I mean, it's the strangest, I get.
Yeah. Thank you for asking.
There are more than one person inside of us,
Right?
you know?
And do I want to, I would also, this would be something we've also already discussed. I would also resist anyone telling me that he was somehow limited. I mean, I would be fighting that like, who the hell are you? He's 6 months old, right? So I would totally be fighting that. So,
You're sitting on a razor.
right?
Our son made a movie with another friend of his about a child that was born without 4 limbs and was a quadriplegic. And the grandparents were horrified and terrified and crying and everything. And of course the parents said, no, it's gonna be over, we're gonna make it, we're gonna make it. And that kid ended up wrestling and doing extraordinary things. And he's nice looking and so.
That always helps.
That helps a lot.
Yes,
When you're
and this is
looking.
Eugene. He's adorable.
Yeah,
And everybody
helps.
likes, you know, they love Eugene, right?
Yeah.
When I've got things in my brain that I can't shake, like your worries,
Yeah,
obsessions that come in, I can't get them out. My friend Deborah sort of helped me say one of the ways to loosen that jam is to say thank you thank you for this absurd worry, or thank you. Now maybe I don't, or let it go. But she was guiding me not to strangle it, but to say, oh, you precious thing. Now that I don't need this right now.
and I don't think about it when I'm with him. You know, like that's the
Even
good
by
news
yourself.
about, the good news about being there is I don't think about any of it.
And that's where his parents are.
Yeah.
They're on deck.
Yeah,
Oh, God. So, you know, I think I may have told you this, but if I start a book, a mystery, there's a certain point I have to read the final chapter or I can't read the book. I cannot wait. I'm so impatient. I can't pay attention to the book.
and I am the opposite in that I have, you know how many books I have where I have not finished because I do not know what happens.
Oh,
I do not want to know.
You
It
don't
doesn't
want to
throw
know.
my work. I never finished reading Goldfinch or whatever that book is.
Oh, right.
Because I was like, I don't want to know. I just don't want to know what's in
that's
it.
hilarious.
I thought the start of that was the best part.
It was great.
A little
Yeah.
cumbersome
After it got
It's a
there,
big book.
and most of her books are like that. A book she wrote about the college thing, I was just like, I couldn't even, yeah.
Great opening.
So if you're gonna read one book, would you read Walk in Love or this other, the 12 stages of, what is it called? Celtic Life?
Oh, I would read the Celtic.
Yeah, I think it's extraordinary.
It's with the Celtics.
I think I'm
really know.
Celtic. I think I'm self.
Scottish?
No, it's Irish.
Irish.
It's just, it's life.
More spiritual.
And what the good news is the woman who's writing it, it's like, and she's just, what do I love most about it? So yes, she does cover some of the more well-known kind of Celtic saints, but she also covers what I like to call hinge saints. They were holy people before there was a church in Ireland. And then the Catholic Church was smart enough to say, this is well established, and it has good theology, and we're keeping them.
And it's, some of it was an outgrowth of the pagan world.
Oh, that's what I'm saying, they're Druid. It was just a relationship to the world they lived in. We give it other names like pagan, Druid, but all it was saying they just watched the signs and symbols that were around them. They lived in the moment for that day.
I'm just, my family is descendant from the last pagan king of O'Donohoe in 900 or whatever in Ireland.
Is it, so you pronounce it like not O'Donohue, but O'Donohoe? Okay.
That's what I'm told.
Yeah.
Where's that Celtic?
He's just, it's in his bulletins, both. Because we were reading John O'Donohue, right? And it's famous, they put blessings, we were talking about that. But this is just about blessing every moment. This is all, that's really, you could boil her book down to, you know, how do you do that?
Well, if you slow down enough, I mean, everything is true. And everything. And this, as an architect, it bothers me when people talk about sacred space. I think every space ought to be sacred. I mean, this room, I mean, don't denigrate even, I'm strange in a sense, Jeff, I mean, oil, even the bathrooms, everything, they ought to all be living spaces.
Well, that's probably what made you a great architect. Makes you a great.
They're not throwaway spaces.
No.
You got to preach in a minute.
I have.
Thank you for abiding with us.
Oh, you're welcome.
Don't guide and
Thank you for-
divide.
Yes.